Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero. Our guest today is Jordan Harbinger. Jordan's moving the needle on this planet by helping however many people are responsible for 5 million plus downloads on iTunes every month connect with the top performers in every field. Jordan grew up in Michigan and did his undergrad and went to law school at Michigan, became a Wall Street lawyer, and very quickly realized he wasn't going to be fulfilled in that career. He eventually started a podcast which was centered around curating best practices to achieve personally and professionally. That business was a success, and he grew it and its constituency until he and his partners separated. The long and the short of it is that a year ago he left it behind, and not without some very serious trepidation and a mountain of uncertainty, started the Jordan Harbinger Show. It was a big leap, but along with his wife Jen and producer Jason DeFilippo, they took it. And as it turns out, he was the charm. Listeners in droves, including myself, ditched the old show and followed Jordan to the new one, which in its first year won Apple's Best of 2018 in the category of personal development. You should listen to it. It's the Jordan Harbinger Show. He gets deep into untapped wisdom of the world's top performers, from Barbara Boxer to Barry Katz to Drew Pinsky to Shaquille O'Neal, too many to name. And today we tap into his. Back for more, here's our friend, Jordan Harbinger.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from the Offspring.
This is Nathan East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reece.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
This is Jordan Harbinger, and you're listening to the Break It Down Show.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
We are at the lovely abode of Jordan and Jen Harbinger, and we are joining you just following the 1-year anniversary of the Jordan Harbinger Show.
That's right.
Which is cool because the last time we were here was almost precisely 1 year ago.
When did you guys come here?
You had just dropped maybe episode 4.
Oh, so I was... Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That was like early trauma times.
It was, as Jen describes it, and she's described it now, and she's, a lot more... I mean, back then you guys were still dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
And now that you have some hindsight, she said, yeah, we were really, really, I was surprised that you guys were able to get anything because we were stressed and we were... But that episode was great.
I'm glad. Yeah, I was probably... What's weird about traumatizing events is that you get so worn down by them, by dealing with them, that sometimes you cannot... The thing about traumatizing events is sometimes you get so far down... Your energy levels can get so worn down by dealing with the event that this weirdly authentic, raw, unfiltered version of yourself comes out, and it can be really interesting. So, like, when you guys were here, I remember it a little. I don't remember what I said, obviously, but I remember being like, these guys are cool, these guys are my friends, I'm not, like, in the zone where I gotta be, like, fronting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you were loose.
Yeah. And you're in my house, so I'm not like, hey, everything's perfect. I'm like, this is a shit sandwich. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I just did.
I think you should.
And like, yeah, I'm wearing sweatpants. I probably like hadn't slept well for a month by that time, possibly, maybe give or take.
Yeah,
maybe even just 2 weeks. How long do you need to not sleep to be like kind of over it though? Right, like 1 day for me.
Well, you go over the hump.
Yeah.
And then you're just doing it. And I think we did catch you in that zone.
I can tell you exactly where you were. You mentally knew that you were going to figure it out, and you had already done it once, so you'd be able to do it better. Mm-hmm. But emotionally, you were still like, everybody's counting on me, and, I know, but you didn't feel like you had that realization yet because there was so many things to figure out,
Yeah.
You guys were still dealing with the old contracts and all that stuff was going on. There was all this just housekeeping to do. And so it's hard to have a good handle on what 2 months from then is even going to look like.
Yeah, that kind of nails it. Yeah, and it's not just it's a little bit of an understatement, right? Because you think, oh, what's it going to look like in 2 months? But your options aren't like, let's say you have a big project at work. Oh, what's this going to look like in 2 months? Are we going to come in on time? Am I going to get yelled at by the boss? Are my workers going to be a little stressed? That's a small range.
Yeah.
This was like, am I going to fail and have to move in with my parents, or am I and I fire everyone, or is this going to be like something that we survive? It wasn't like, this is going to be so great. People were telling me, a lot of my entrepreneur mentors, if you will, buddies, people who'd been through some serious ish, were like, this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to you in maybe 1, 2, or 3 years. You don't know.
Yeah.
But when
they had seen it.
They had seen it.
And they were seeing it for you.
But when you're in
But you're
week
at the front of the road. Yeah.
Forget that crap. Like, in 3 years, you're going to be like, yay. Well, great.
Uh-huh.
That's like
just
saying,
trying to figure out this week.
Yeah, that's like the first day of final exam. So it's only a week long. You're just going to not, or like, taking the bar exam or any sort of really stressful, trying time where you get kind of like one shot at it. It's not like, I don't know. There's just not a whole lot of things in life that are like that. And
so this really serves as the Where Are They Now episode.
Yeah.
Because we were there just as you were going through that. I just want to get some housekeeping out of the way.
Yeah.
Everybody who hasn't already, and let's face it, if you haven't already, I don't know why you haven't, but JordanHarbinger.com, subscribe on iTunes, all of that stuff. You just won an Apple Award for
I did.
most downloaded.
Most downloaded new show of 2018. So it's Apple's Best of 2018.
Yeah.
Most downloaded new show.
Holy cow.
Which was awesome.
Yeah.
Because, well, for many reasons. But one, I've never won an award from Apple or been awarded anything. I don't know if I won it. It was more like nobody. It's weird. It's hard saying won because it wasn't like nobody voted. Nobody at a committee picked. But on the other hand, the listeners who downloaded the show, shared the show, helped the show build, they kind of voted by actually
showing up.
Picking up the show. By showing up. Yeah, by showing up. Exactly.
Yeah, we voted with our downloads. So
yeah,
that serves as a giant middle finger to your previous show, which shall remain nameless.
Yes.
Does it exist anymore?
It does. It does exist. And what's funny is a lot of it's kind of it's a little petty, but I reserve the right to enjoy that since I'm like still in litigation with people that screwed over a lot of my team members. Yeah. It's funny to see people who go, "Hey, I was looking for you," and I was like, "What the F is this?" And then I found your new show, and I was like, "Oh, okay," because people who had missed like the jump, they're like, "What happened? Where's Jordan? Like, what's going on?" And if you look at the reviews of the old show, it's like, this show totally sucks now. What happened? And it's like very gratifying because what you don't want is for your listeners to be like, whatever. Yeah. That would be like the worst.
Yeah.
Right. And we have mutual friends and stuff. And apparently there's like a lot of surprise on the other side. Like, I can't believe people are going to them. And like, I can't believe it. And it was really a surprise in a positive way for me and the team to see almost the entire audience just migrate over to the new show. It was really cool.
Wow.
Wasn't totally expecting that,
Well, it's great that you didn't have that expectation.
Yeah.
But I see the nature of it because, we migrated over and it just seemed like the thing to do because you were the heart and soul of the previous show. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's left of it. Maybe it's grown its own great heart and soul, and I don't know.
I haven't heard much.
Congratulations on the award. It's well deserved. You clearly worked super hard. You guys really nail it down. Do you feel like you were liberated at some point to do things right?
Yes.
The new way?
Yeah, and yes. The short answer is yes. The reason is because before, whenever you have business partners, or I don't even know if that's all right, you could have people on your team. It doesn't even matter. Whenever there's somebody in your life that has one vision and it doesn't align with what's going on, you hear founders and entrepreneurs talk about this all the time, but you're just reading an article in like Fast Company, so you don't really, you're not really putting yourself in their shoes. But when you hear company co-founders, or like the CEO will fire somebody, or like the board will fire somebody high ranking in the C-suite, and then whenever you read about that, it's never like, oh, they weren't getting it done. It's always like that we had different visions. And I used to think that was this weird sort of politically correct term for getting rid of somebody that you don't like, right? Yeah. And sure, that probably exists at some level.
Yeah.
But now I totally get it. Like, if you worked at Twitter and you started Twitter with a buddy, and one guy was like, it's going to be a news service, and it's going to be top down, and we're going to provide all this stuff, and we're going to send it to people's phones as a text message. And then the other guy's like, no, I want everyone to participate in this like discussion. You can't do both. And if you've got the marketing team is kind of like on this guy's side, and then the implementation teams and all the like coding, whatever product teams are on the other side, you're gonna fail so hard.
Yeah.
So you have to get rid. The higher ranking member has to be like, so we're doing it my way. Sorry. It doesn't mean the other person wasn't capable of executing the vision at all. So what we had was a little different, but I realized that now ours was more of a bad, mean-spirited sort of ego thing on the other side.
That happens too.
And that happens too. But this was now I no longer have to be like there were so many times. This example will put it in perfectly. There are so many times where I knew that I couldn't execute on what was blatantly a really good idea because it would hurt someone's feelings in the company. Yeah. And it was like so dumb. And I remember this company, actually magazine called The Atlantic, which is a popular big magazine, wanted to profile me for the magazine.
They wanted to profile you.
Yeah, and I was like, holy crap, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
So I told my business partners, because Atlantic wanted to come to the office in LA and see what we did and profile me and everything. And I was like, hey, I've got these partners. And they were like, we're really only interested in you. You're the face of the company. And I said, fine. So I told my business partners, and they were like, cool, we just want to have a call with her about some questions. And I was like, cool. And they were like, you don't have to be on the call. And I was like, pretty sure I should be on the call. And they did some like tricky stuff in the email where all I know is that there was an email thread that I wasn't on, and then Atlantic spiked the whole piece.
Wow.
And I was like, what happened? And I reached out to the Atlantic, and she was like, oh, yeah, I just don't think it's going to be like a fit for what we're looking for and all that. And then she just kind of ghosted me, and I was like, what is happening? So I asked my business partners, and they were like, oh, yeah, I don't know. We just never heard back. And I thought, you're strangely not upset about this really big opportunity for press getting spiked. What's going on? Never found out. But I found out later that basically they kind of were like, we're the real thing that's going on in the company. You need to profile us. And then she was like, you guys are a bunch of losers. I'm out. Because they were fighting for the limelight. And it's like, guys, who cares?
You can smell that. You can sniff that out a mile away.
And it was just BS. It was like, guys, even though in their defense, they're right. We're a team. We're a team in large part. Who cares who gets the glory, guys? Come on.
Yeah, this is a huge opportunity to be publicized by a magazine that's trusted by a lot of people.
Oh, my gosh. And it would have been a piece of press that would have lasted decades.
Sure.
And here we go. We didn't get it because, the other guy wanted to be in the limelight. I want to have his picture in there. I mean, it was like that one thing after another. So the reason I was able to grow the Jordan Harbinger Show so much bigger than the previous show was because there wasn't that fight over this stuff. And I thought, they'll be able to do this stuff too because they won't have me in the picture, and obviously our egos were clashing supposedly. Yeah. Now they're freaking fighting with each other over this crap. Right. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, we had a guy on the show. He's an entrepreneur down here. His name's Chris Duggan. John and I have done a lot of different things for him. But he talked about when you have it figured out, there's a pulling. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. So you have your Twitter example. It's like, we want it to be A, we want it to be B, but really it's somewhere in between, and you don't have any control because the crowd goes towards what they like about the platform. And you have to have the surrender of ego in effort to make the machine work, where it's like, we've got 15 million people gathered in between A and B. How do we adapt to this? And again, who cares about who gets the spread in Atlantic? It's like all of our stock shares go up when there's a 10-page spread, you know?
I get it. Like, the counter argument to what I'm saying now is, easy for you to say, Jordan. You're the one who was going to get featured in this magazine, so you can say who cares. But I think when you look at it, and I'm not into sports at all, but when you look at like football teams, how many guys on the Patriots, for example, love them or hate them, are in the press being like, me? Zero.
None.
And they know because they're sitting on 6 Super Bowl rings, I believe.
Yeah. Right. And there's a thing called the Patriot Way. And when the guys are loyal to the Belichick, and again, love them or hate them, but they have a system, and they say, come here, get with the system. And if you get with the system, we have a formula that allows us to win. And guys buy into that, and that's why it works. As soon as they get a quarterback who decides that it's all about him, and let's face it, Tom Brady is he's arguably the greatest. He's got the most rings. He's a guy who himself has surrendered to the system.
Yeah.
Years ago, he surrendered to the system. And even now, he could stand up and say, me, all he wants.
Mm-hmm.
He still doesn't because he's bought in. But are you glad that you got a shot to build what you built the first time? Because now it's got your name on it.
Yeah.
And now you get to launch into it with, I know where the pitfalls are. I know where a bunch of the speed bumps are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My wife's all like, but all this money and stuff, like they owe you. And it's funny because she's right, and a lot of people are saying that, especially my attorney. But like for me personally, I don't care as much about that because I look at that opportunity and I think, well, that was necessary for me to come up how it was. I wasted a lot of time trying to please the other guys in the company by like giving them what they wanted. And I realized a larger truth about sort of like life in general, probably, which is that other people's insecurities will always bring you down if you allow them to. Other people's issues, all that stuff. You have to really protect your mind from other people's garbage. And I'm not what you'd consider a people pleaser, but of course nobody wants to work in a company that has like all kinds of internal strife. Yeah. And if you think it's within your power to sort of calm that, you will. However, at the point at which you are subduing your own ambition, or I should say at the point at which you're subduing the success of the company because you're subduing your own ambition in order to make other people feel good about, let's say, slacking off, not working, or not being talented, or not having their stuff together, then that's a different story. So, like,
let me take that a step further, because I'm sure there are some listeners out there who are experiencing that, but there are probably some experiencing the situation where it's not even. It's sabotage. Like somebody is self-sabotaging their effort at a place where they work. And
you're right.
And if you're working to make that person feel better and you're sacrificing some piece of yourself or your own professional integrity, that's doing nobody any favors.
It's so true, yeah. There were so many times at which here's a classic example. I had an interview with Hines Ward.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. It's like a football themed show. I never watch football, and I'm not a sports guy, but I had an interview with Hines Ward for the old show. And I remember one of the guys that I used to work with was like this diehard Steelers fan. And I thought, I'm going to call him and a couple days before, tell him that I got this interview, allow him to sort of Skype in, join the interview, everything. He goes, oh my God, this is amazing. Thanks for the opportunity. Look, I'm going to join for like the first 15 minutes of the show. I want to talk about these few things, but this is your thing. I'm not going to step on your toes. And I was like, you're welcome to join me for the whole show. He goes, no. I'm going to join for the first bit, and I'm just going to say a few things that are relevant to what we do to Heinz because I know all the background, and then you guys can transition and I'll drop off. And I said, fine. So the day of, it's like 10 a.m. or something like that. The dude shows up wasted.
Oh, no.
Just beyond wasted.
Oh, man.
And I was like, hey, dude, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, I stayed up till like 8 a.m. And I was like, you didn't stay up till 8 a.m. You're still awake.
Yeah.
Like, you are
yeah,
not.
It's 8:15.
Yeah. You are not, you are not in shape for this. And he's like, it's fine. And he started to get really belligerent. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to like see if he can fake his way through it. And I'll edit out what needs to get edited out. So we went through and did it. And my producer was like, hey, I don't know if we can air this. So I was like, air the stuff where he sounds like coherent, at least a little. And he's like, okay, I can do that. And we had a ton of listener feedback that was like, and I re-listened to it and I was like, it's sort of passable. I had a ton of listener feedback that was like, what was that?
Yeah.
Who was that? And what was that? And I was like, oh crap, we did not fool anyone.
Yeah.
And people who knew us all personally were like, oh man, so-and-so, I won't mention his name. They're like, so-and-so, his substance abuse stuff is acting up again. And I was like, yeah.
Wow.
Big time. I mean, this is like a Tuesday. This is not a Saturday morning, had a bender. This is like a weekday, early in the week, still just totally messed up. And I just thought, like, this is not a guy who can... And he had to go teach a full day of class. It wasn't like he could do this and go back to sleep. He had to teach a full day of class. And I thought, how do I work with this schmo? Like,
wow.
who does that?
Yeah.
And like, it was just not just inexcusable, but it was just a metaphor for like, okay, how much of this crap am I going to put up with? Like, do I have to support your addiction, your mania BS, whatever you want to call it, egomaniac baloney? I'm trying not to swear on your show, so I'm tripping over myself. But like your egomaniac
swear
bullshit.
away, man.
Yeah,
Let loose.
And so like, how much of that do I have to put up with? Because if this were my own family, I would be like, intervention. But since it's my business partners, which, by the way, were my livelihood that I worked with every day, why am I tolerating that? I wouldn't tolerate that from my own brother.
Wow.
Right? If I had one. And so I just thought that was so weird. And then that was one of the bigger wake-up calls. And my producer, Jason, was like, when can we just be away from these losers? Like, they don't care.
Yeah.
If they care, they're sabotaging. And you're right. There were people that... Those guys were sabotaging the business, but I was also sabotaging myself in a way because I was putting up with this stuff and being like, oh, well. And I remember thought processes like, man, we could do a book and we could go on a big book tour and da-da-da-da. And if we got this, the advance would be this much and we could budget it. And then I went, nah, there's no point. I'd have to share it with these guys. And then if I had to share it with them, they're going to spend the money on going to Thailand and getting a bunch of booze and partying, and I'm going to have to take the rest of this money and then put the whole book tour in there. I'm going to have to do the tour alone because I can't bring these guys in public because they don't know how to act. So I was just like, nah. So I literally turned down a huge opportunity from a major company, and I remember it was so big that I had to talk to a lawyer and say, can I turn this down, or is this a breach of a fiduciary duty to turn this thing down?
Sure.
And the lawyer was like, no, you're within your rights to do this in this certain way.
Wow.
I had to literally seek legal counsel to see if I could turn down a huge-ass opportunity because I knew that those guys would literally just fuck the whole thing up, and it wasn't worth my time to do it.
Give me a minute.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pete.
Yeah.
I've never felt like I had to turn anything down because fucking Pete. So there.
Somebody struck a nerve.
I appreciate that you say that because it really kind of brings some things into focus, and I hope it does for everybody. I think that's really the heart of your analysis. Is the heart of your success for those of us who listen to your show has to do with the fact that you're willing to analyze all of those things for our benefit. You bring performers on who are at the top of their game in whatever the game is, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that we all can relate to experiences that you not only highlight that other people have been through, but we're sort of walking this journey with you and experiencing it, with your help because you're so willing to reveal all the things that you go through without any hesitation. That has everything, I think, to do with the fact that you have such a loyal listenership and that it continues to grow. So I think one of the things that when Pete and I were thinking, what do we want to talk to Jordan about? We talked about how, what our mantra should be is you're not fooling anybody.
Yeah.
If you're not fooling anybody and you go through life with that attitude, I think for me it's been cathartic just to begin to think that way. Like, I'm not fooling anybody.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We have
you definitely aren't.
Our friend, see, our friend Jay. We have a friend who is a comedian.
He knows Jay Moore.
It's Jay Moore.
Oh yeah,
and
nice. I forgot you guys know each other. I was like, wait, how is that? All right. That's how we met, probably.
We took a picture one time, and I go, how's this look, Jay? And he was like, it looks like me. That's what I look like. And, his hair was fucked up or whatever. And I think this is one of those things that I think when we all come to terms with the fact that you're not fooling anybody, ever.
Yeah.
So you might as well just put it out there. So this is a piece of art kind of dissecting your success.
Oh, I appreciate that.
It comes from that.
I love the idea that you're not fooling anyone. What's weird is there's this whole you're not fooling anyone thing that a lot of people have taken to be like, oh, I need to be like that. And then they go and they construct this sort of like fake online persona that's really, in air quotes, authentic, but it's fake authentic. So then they kind of try too hard to be real, authentic. And it's like, oh yeah, look at my corny dance moves. Oh, this is me being lame. And it's like, this is all super constructed.
Right. You constructing this as being lame.
Yeah. And
again, you are fooling no one.
But what's weird is I think a lot of those people have some short-term success. There's a lot of motivational speakers especially that really do a lot of this. They're like, I'm authentic. And I'm not trying to genderify this, but I feel like the women's self-help space suffers from this a lot. The guys are worse in many other ways, but the reason I'm singling out the women's self-help space is because women have spent a lot of time thinking that they have to be perfect, and that's very common among American women, especially in middle America, having to be raised a certain way, think a certain way. So when someone comes in and is like, hey, it's okay for you to think differently, they're really into that. But a lot of it is, it's okay for you to think differently, but also you got to buy my brand of clothing, and you've got to do this multi-level marketing bullshit that I'm selling you.
As long as you think differently this way.
Yeah,
think
the
differently
whole world
my way.
has become a multi-level marketing thing. It's just everywhere with my ClickFunnels. Get in, get my free PDF and all these things. You're just like, stop selling me the same thing over and over and over again. One of the things that we've discovered on this show is sort of the flip side of this. You can't not fooling anyone is, and it comes from the actors that we have on. Is talking about show up on time, hit your marks, tell the truth. But the truth is way more complex than that. It's like, what's John's truth? That's what he brings. Certain character actors just bring something. Certain actors can change that around, but what's your truth? What do you bring? Like the moment you come into the room and you do your job, what is your truth?
I don't even know. What is my truth? That's such a weird question, man. I mean, no offense, but it's very bizarre because I don't know. What context are we talking about? Like, what do I bring to the table? God, if I knew that, we'd be having this conversation on my jet.
Says the guy who lives in this great condo in an amazing neighborhood in Northern California where real estate prices are skyrocketing.
Jeez, I know. Tell me about it. I'm trying to buy another house, and I'm like, I'm like, Mom. And my parents not really. I mean, my mom's a retired public school teacher, so she's not about to cut a check for that. But I feel like saying, Mom, or all my parents.
Are your folks still in Michigan?
They are, yeah.
How about Jason lives in L.A. still?
Producer Jason lives in L.A. He moved to Chicago, then he moved back to L.A. He loves L.A., but then he likes Chicago. I don't know. He's a moody guy. Even with his moves, he's a moody guy.
Yeah.
He must forget how bad the weather is in
That's
Chicago.
the thing. He goes to Chicago, and he's like, I love it. I'm in my own house. FLA. Screw this. And then he's like, it's cold. I'm moving back. I hate it here. This is ridiculous. No, I mean, Chicago's great. It's just the problem is, winter. Yeah. Really.
I'll tell you, the real problem is winter never ends. In June, you're like, it just snowed today.
I know. Yeah, so the problem really, it's not just one problem with Chicago. It's mostly September, October, November, December, January, February, March, and then a little bit of April.
Yeah.
But the rest of the time, it's great.
It's great the rest of the time. Pete lived in one of those places where a home run in Wrigley Field might hit his window.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. I don't want you to wiggle off the hook on this truth question.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
You gather a lot of people. You have a big audience. You deliver something to them. There's some form of truth in that because you're not trying to fake it till you make it.
Right.
So what do you think that is? Well, like if you could characterize it, what's your truth?
Maybe this isn't a real answer to the question, or maybe this is an answer to a different question, but I don't go into interviews where I don't care about the content of the interview. I've spent a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work.
Right.
Because that's when you go, tell me how you got to where you are. That's when your questions suck because you're not really curious. You're just like, oh, I have this YouTube celebrity in front of me. Got to check that name off the list. That'll be good for search engine optimization. Yeah. That doesn't work for me. So I have people on that are like neuroscientists, great authors, thinkers, illusionists, people with crazy stories because I'm like, I want to hear the story. if it's a story that I wouldn't, if it's a story or conversation that I wouldn't listen to if I weren't recording it, I just don't make it because it sucks otherwise. It just sucks if you do that.
Yeah.
You end up with a lot of these, and podcasts are famous for sucking in that way, that very specific way.
Yeah.
Where you get somebody who's like, hey, so you're such an inspiring singer from 2004. Now you have your own skincare line. So inspiring. Wow, that's amazing. And you're like, what are you bringing to the table? Hey, I'm marketing my skincare line. Oh, so inspiring. Why?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a little, but like, what is this jock dork bringing to the table? Why do you need to even be here?
Yeah.
What are you talking? Why are you talking? You know, that's how I feel when I hear shows like that. So I try not to be that way. I try to ask good questions, get a great story going, get the show flow going, and then just get the hell out of the way. And like, if it's a really rowdy conversation with somebody that I like, that I find I'm on equal footing in a lot of ways, then I'll talk more and it'll be more interesting. It'll be more of a back and forth and less of an interview, which is great. But there's never a time in which I'm like, okay, I got to like suffer through and be animated during this show. Like, I'm not putting on a show. And I think the truth of my truth is that there's no show to put on because nobody wants to see your fucking show. They just want to hear you,
So true.
and they want to hear you interact with the guest, or they only care about the guest. Nobody wants you there, really, unless they know you already. So, like, my show fans, for the Jordan Harbinger Show fans that have been listening for a while, they're glad that I'm there. New listeners could not care. They resent that I'm there, right? So I want them to feel like, okay, I listened and this guy added just enough and then got out of the way.
Yeah,
Nobody
that
wants...
becomes your responsibility.
It is.
Because if they don't care about you and they care about the guest, then what you bring to the table is more of the guest.
Right.
So, wow, we never heard that story about, whatever.
Exactly.
Or those are details of Hines Ward's career we didn't know.
Yeah, because nobody's like, oh, I came here and I'm so glad that random Jordan guy talked about how this relates to his life. Like, you add that in pieces, and I do that all the time in the show, but I don't go, let me stop you right there, Hines. That Super Bowl thing is pretty cool, but let me talk about my upbringing. It's like, unless it serves as a highlighter to highlight a piece of his story or a piece of his takeaway, I have no reason to say it. And I used to do that in old episodes of the show, like from 10 plus years ago, whatever, of the old show. I'd get comments like, hey, it was cool that you had that guy on, but why are you talking about now you flew first class to Las Vegas? Like, we don't care. And I'm like, I used to get angry, and then I realized that's actually really good feedback. You don't care. And I'm glad that you told me you don't care, because you shouldn't care. Why am I saying that? And so I started to think about why I was saying the things that I was saying, and I realized there's a huge percentage of crap that I was saying on my show years and years ago that was designed to, like, get people to like me, get people to think that I was cool or, like, worthy of being in the room.
Yeah.
And that just rubs people the wrong way, because the people that already think you're worthy of being in the room are kind of like, ooh, this is not a good look. Why are you trying to constantly qualify yourself as being as deserving,
as being worthy,
as being worthy? And the people that don't think you're worthy, they're not going to be convinced by you in that moment. So you just seem like this try-hard asshole. Yep. And so I just started.
That's what I do.
So I just started.
I'm all guilty over here.
I started like leaving that stuff out, and people. And then I thought, oh, I'm not talking that much, and it's like, that's okay. Larry King told me, he goes, "You're there every week.
Yeah,
you'll get your 2 cents in eventually."
Wow.
Like, you're there every week.
Yes.
You don't need to impress anyone in the time span that you have during that hour. And in some respects you do, because you have to get people to come back. The way you get people to come back is you do such a damn good job with that one that they go, oh, what else has this guy got?
Yeah.
Who else is on this show?
Right.
Not by, like, wow, that guy's so cool. I want to get his PDF. I want your mini
download
course.
his free PDF.
Yeah, like, that's what these marketers are trying to do. They're trying to be like, oh, I'm here with all these cool people. Look how cool I am. I have a big Instagram. Check out my Twitter. Oh, yeah, by the way, I'm on YouTube. Also, I've got a free course that can teach you how to make money online. Go fuck yourself. Your audience sucks when you do that, by the way. I've talked with a lot of these guys that are marketers that have these shows, and their show basically exists as to create a personal brand for them so they can sell stuff. Their show stinks, and their audience is a bunch of really young, dumb people that are looking for shortcuts.
Yeah.
And the second those people outgrow you, they bounce.
They
leave you in the dust.
So we've had sometimes, somebody will make a comment and it'll be not a very flattering comment. I end up being friends with that guy. Because it's one thing to be, okay, everybody, don't load up this show with mean-spirited shit.
I want to be friends with Gerald, so I'm going to send a bunch of shitty comments.
No, it's not that. But if there's something that has some value and it's candid, I want to be friends with that guy. Like, okay, that hurts my feelings a little bit.
Yeah.
They probably needed to be hurt right then. Let's go in on this. And I enjoy that kind of feedback because that's growth shit.
Yeah.
It is. You know what? The internet does that, though. Like, I have a weekly segment on, don't mean to brag, no, I have a weekly segment on Adam Carolla, and his audience is bigger and tougher because it's a comedy audience, so it's like, you know. But people will, there were several times in the past couple months where people would write in and be like, Harbinger's freaking lame. And I'd be like, oh, what don't you like about it? And I'd go back and forth with them. And some people were just like toddlers. They just needed a hug or whatever. But then other people were like, oh, I didn't expect you to respond to this. So
Yes.
I guess I just wasn't expecting like personal growth advice in the middle of this Corolla segment. And before that you were there, I don't know if you heard, they were talking about this other thing and it got me all riled up. And then they dropped the topic and then you came on. I guess I'm not really mad at you. And I was like, oh, okay. But then, other people, like I said, were sort of toddlerish. But then other people were like, hey, this segment actually would belong in a different part of the show. And I was like, oh, we should loop Adam's producer in on this because maybe there's something to that.
Right.
But I thought that was really funny because you'll get this nasty feedback. Some of it you can discard because it's just garbage from garbage trolls on the internet.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you'll get feedback from somebody and you'll be like, wow, that was unduly harsh. And then they feel like... often they'll feel really crappy that they phrased it that way because they're like, oh crap, I totally never thought you would see that.
Yeah.
So the truth is this 10% kernel.
Yep.
And the other 90% was me showing off on Twitter because...
Yeah, because I had internet anonymity on my
Right.
side. And then oh shit, there's Jordan.
Right.
Jesus, wait a minute.
Pretty
What was
much.
it? No, I didn't mean that. So
Pretty much. You know what I also... I found online, I thought this is like an interesting phenomenon, speaking of authenticity and stuff. I remember one guy said, this segment is the worst. Screw this guy. And I was like, oh, what's wrong? Why don't you like it? And he's like, whatever, bro. I'm just being real. And I was like, oh, interesting. Because I bet you wouldn't be this real if we were sitting in the same room. Mm-hmm. Because you're not being real. You're actually just super insecure. And so you're sort of mouthing off. And then he's like, whatever, snowflake. And I thought like, and I was laughing because I thought like, oh, I bet this is one of those like involuntary celibate guys, like all these.
Right.
So I started wondering like, what makes a person who would talk to someone like this online? Because we've all been rude online, but this is like next level for no reason. And I so I looked at his Twitter feed and I got this little tiny glimpse into this sort of very pathetic life. And it was like a lot of him tweeting at celebrity women and being like, you're really pretty, you're gorgeous, like just one after the other. And I thought, ooh, this is like really kind of sad. Like I went from being like kind of annoyed to just feeling really bad for this person. And then I realized that a lot of people online, somehow Twitter especially, but online in general is like this place where people just act out all this crap. Because during the day, they feel like they can't be real. Mm-hmm. So they feel like they're being real online, but really they're just having a freaking temper tantrum.
Yeah.
And so I thought about the concept of like realness. And usually whenever we think we're being real, we're being kind of the opposite of real. It's usually like a justification for either being rude or for this faux authenticity crap we were talking about before. Because it's so hard to actually be real, it's like a skill now. Like, how do you take the person that you are with your friends and family and then be that person online? It's like impossible. It's so hard. I'm literally spending the next several years, and I've spent several years before this, working with like coaches on everything so that I can bring my quote-unquote real self from my personal life into the show, because it's actually really, really hard.
Yeah.
But when I'm at dinner with my friends and they're all cracking up and I feel like I'm quote-unquote on fire, I want that on the show.
Right.
but it's really hard.
It is.
And so whenever someone's like, I'm just being real, I'm like, oh, I'm jealous. How do I do that? And then I realize, oh, you don't even know what real is. You're not being real at all. You're being a
Meanwhile,
child.
you're sincerely trying to figure it out.
It's so hard, though. It's really, I'm trying to figure it out.
And I'm not saying I have it figured out, but here was, I think, one of the steps that I took was I started hitting the love button on Facebook for everything that I love. And it meant, like, I've maybe made people feel insecure because if somebody does something that I think is great, I love it. I love it. And it's like, dude, that's a dude. Did you know really you hit the love button on that dude? Yeah, I love that dude. I love him.
Feeling emasculated.
And so that's one of the things that I just thought, here's my first foray into you're not fooling anybody. I'm just going to love everybody I love. And that's the easier part.
Do you guys drink, by the way? I have some Armenian brandy. Ooh,
Sure. I drink now. I'll take mine in a dirty glass.
I'm going to drink the rest of this water and then just have it in here.
Oh, okay, cool. Do you want ice, Pete?
However you recommend it. I've not had it, so if you think it needs a rock or two, that's fine.
I mean, it's sort of whatever. Actually, I'll let you smell it, and then you can decide what you think.
Just throw 2 rocks in there. I'll be fine.
2 rocks in
Yep.
there? So, this is really good stuff, actually. I mean, it seems like really good stuff. I don't
Smells good.
really know. I'm a really lightweight, so this is going to be a lot for me.
True Confessions with Jordan Harbinger.
There you go. Yeah.
This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business, or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
Reach out to us on Twitter
at Pete A. Turner,
or at JohnLG69.
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
I'm a really lightweight, so this is going to be a lot for me.
True Confessions with Jordan Harbinger.
There you go. Yeah.
Jordan just served us some Armenian brandy.
That's right.
Yes. We were talking about technology off mic, and I've reached the age where technology moves at a pace that I don't naturally know when to be prepared for the technology to happen.
Okay.
So, like, I went to my high school. I go every year to talk to the kids, just like, I'm you from the future. What would you like to know? And then they ask me questions. But
They let him do this.
That's
Yeah.
God, what they must be really short of role models.
That's the pitch. The pitch is I'm going to tell these kids,
Yeah.
I'm you from the future. Ask me anything you want.
Yeah.
Am I a
And
famous
nothing's off
YouTube
limit.
celebrity? Unfortunately not.
No, unfortunately, you're a fat middle-aged man.
You're a podcaster. What's a podcast?
Yeah.
They've got an iPad, and you type all your stuff in, then you push the button, it takes a picture and spits out a sticker, and you put it on your chest, and it's like, that's the person, that's the name. So I do it, and I'm like, I'm going to make a funny face. So that, so I'm like, thumbs up. Mm-hmm. And then I stop, and I'm like, okay, did it take the picture? And when I go to look,
Oh, no.
I'm such an old man. Like if you go into that, I know John does this too. Like when you go into the picture booth at the party, and
Yeah.
like the first one, you're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then you're like, it's taking pictures. And then there's one good picture. That's
Yeah.
the age I'm at now.
I know. It sucks because I thought I'm so relevant. Like I'm a digital entrepreneur. I'm in the
Right.
space. And I remember, do you know what SoundCloud is?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So like a few years ago, I remember telling my friend who...
This is good, by the way.
It is really good. It's called Ararat. It's named after a mountain, I guess.
Yeah,
and
that's the one in the Bible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's where I've heard of it. That makes sense. And it's delicious.
Yeah, holy shit, this is delicious.
It's really good. Yeah, it's given to me by these Armenian guys. It came in a leather case, and I'm just like, okay, when your brandy comes in a leather case, you're legit.
Or Armenian, because Armenians tend to come in a leather case.
That's right.
So,
Yeah. So I remember SoundCloud came out, and I never wanted to use it for anything. And my buddy, who was like employee number 30 at Facebook, and now runs this company called Sumo and AppSumo, Noah Kagan. I go, I don't get it, and he goes, I get it. It's like people who want to upload audio but don't want the video. And I was like, why not just put a video with the audio? And they're like, well, some people just have audio up there and there's no video. And I'm like, just put a static image over it. And he's like, yeah, but that's not quite the same thing because then, da-da-da, and I'm like, you just have the audio. And I remember going, I don't get it. Who doesn't get SoundCloud now? It's so obvious what it does and what it's for and who it's for. And I'm a podcaster. It's not like I'm not familiar with needing a place to host audio.
Yeah.
And so, of course, if you're a musician, you throw your mix up there.
Yeah.
You throw your vocal track only up there so other people can remix. Like, it's so fucking obvious now. And I don't know why I didn't get it. It makes me feel dumb. But now I'm like, okay, train yourself, Jordan. Next time you see a tech opportunity, wrap your mind around this. So then Uber, I remember when Uber came along, I was like, this is really cool, but it's kind of expensive. If only, I remember having this thought, if only we could do this and just make it really cheap, and if they added all the taxis in here too. And so a friend of mine made this app called Taxi Magic or something along those lines, and it was like Uber, but you could call a taxi with it. And then, of course, Uber created the ability for you to call like tons of different types of cars and ... The entire world changed, and it became one of the most valuable companies around. And my buddy who created this, or this acquaintance who created this Taxi Magic app, he just went out of business. Like, he never got traction because he never thought, because the cab companies resisted this tooth and nail. They weren't on board, really.
Right.
So when Uber was like, well, screw you guys, we're just going to let people use their private cars. Duh. Like, it's so obvious now that was the solution. And I thought, had I been 5 years younger when I first saw that taxi app, which came way before Uber, I would have been like, hey, do it this way. But it's all like timing and hindsight. But I remember thinking back then, hey, it'd be really cool if you could just have like regular people drive you around.
You live here in the Silicon Valley, and I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I'm often struck, one, by the youth and inexperience of the people who claim to have this body of knowledge. I know how hard I've worked just to be dumb, and it's like, how much of this...
You're really good at being dumb.
Shit Pete would say. If we had a segment of the show where we just went back through our catalog and
just get clips
shit
of
that
stuff.
Pete would say.
Well, let me just, and I'll press pause. I'll come back to the thing. But when you said you've had an illusionist on the show, I thought, has anyone ever been an illusionist? Like, they just specify in alluding to things.
But
yeah. Anyhow, but some of these entrepreneurs, I swear, like, for whatever reason, they catch lightning in a bottle, and that makes them a quote unquote entrepreneur. And then they just take shots at things, and they're just successful often enough that they get to keep doing that.
Yeah.
And they're 28, and they've been through 7 companies. And you're like,
but they become Steph Curry. Like, your job is to shoot from 38 feet. So we're just going to keep passing you the rock because you nailed that one. So we're just going to
no one asks them how many times they miss.
But eventually they get good enough that they keep nailing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just talking about this today with somebody. It's actually... so much, and this is a Silicon Valley guy, like a hacker guy. It is so much easier to make money when you already have a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Because, and Jason Calacanis, who's a early investor in, I want to say, like Twitter and Uber and Facebook, I think. I can't remember now all the stuff he's done. He was on my show.
He's got a couple bucks.
Yeah, he was on my show. It was like episode 100. Yeah, I think he's worth like well over, I don't know, 200, 300, some $1 million.
Yeah.
But he'll take like, I don't know, 20 quote unquote bets a year.
Right.
At maybe $100,000 each. But the thing is, one bet pays off and you get a 42x or more return. You're good.
Yeah, you can afford to miss the shots.
Yeah. And look, think about it. If you get a 20x return and you have a 1 in 25, that's 5% success rate.
Yeah.
And 20x is a low return for somebody who's an angel investor early stage. And 5% is a pretty low but probably realistic success rate. You're going to break even but have founder stock in
something crazy.
Massive unicorn at least once a year.
Yeah.
That's insane. So imagine that you're getting a huge return, which is more likely, at a similar or slightly lower rate. You are going to be loaded.
You're doing massive.
You just have to be prepared to lose a bunch of money early on. And if you have $200 million and you need like 5 of it to live nicely, you're fine. You can spend millions and lose almost all of it.
Farting into the wind.
Yeah, and then you hit Uber and you're like, sweet.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, because you just made $300 million off of that or whatever, right? Or more, right? As an early stage investor. And then, so yeah, you take your $500 million from Facebook and you say, I'm going to lose $100 million over the next 10 years betting on stuff and expect to lose it. And then you accidentally make like $300 million more. That it's really, really easy when you start angel investing to make more money. The thing is, you're going to absolutely lose a ton of it also.
Yeah.
So, but people who don't
to
have
budget
that
the ton.
people who don't have that money don't have the risk tolerance. I can't spend anywhere near that because I'll be homeless, right?
Right.
And I can spend little tiny bits and I can get a good return on some of that after a while, but then it's kind of like, okay. You know, and often you don't have access to the stuff that's going to give you a really good return.
Right.
Like if you're looking at something like Facebook, the next app, right, Snapchat or something like that, a Facebook type of unicorn company, they're not going to let you in the door.
Right.
Because you're not bringing enough cash or connections. That's why they go with venture capitalists. But an angel investor, they have to bring something else. They have to bring something else to the table, usually connections or usually a bunch of early stage capital. So you can't really dabble at a level that's going to be commensurate with your tolerance of risk at a level like you or I. So only the really rich guys get a chance to play in that pool, and then they get to make a lot of money. And it's not unfair anyway. That's how it works.
Yeah, that's how it works. To some degree, it's rigged for them to win that way, but that's how the system is because they've got cash that they can invest, and there are ideas out there that need to be invested in.
What I was going to say with that, too, with all of that, because that's exactly right, is when they look to make this bet, and then you go and you look at an early stage startup company, and like, yeah, we're going to stock the bar, and people can get hammered right here at work. You're like, I, as an investor, I'd be like, I want none of that.
Yeah.
Like, you guys already have this bro culture and everything else, but they're not worried about that because that's part of the bet, right? Whatever these things are, like, work these guys as hard as they want, give them a dream, feed them here, let them wear blankets to work. Who cares? As long as they're out.
Do your dry cleaning. Stay at your desk.
Right, stay here.
But it makes sense, right? I was thinking about this the other day. I was in New York last week. I was at Sirius XM satellite radio, and in the same building there is White and Case. It's a law firm. It's a really nice white shoe law firm, like Wall Street level, baller status, and internet multinational firm. And I saw people going out to get lunch and coming back in, and I was like, how inefficient is it that thousands of people in the middle of this giant skyscraper, among other skyscrapers, have to
leave,
go downstairs, wait for the elevator, wait in line for some food, walk around. They're on a break.
Yeah.
Screw that shit.
No.
Here in Silicon Valley,
that is overrated.
Hell no. You go to LinkedIn, and it's like food truck, barbecue this, sushi thing there, 7 types of cuisine in 4 different cafeterias alone across the campus. I don't want you going and getting in your car. I want you to take your 45-minute, hour-long lunch break with your colleagues, talking about stuff, working on team stuff, possibly talking about work, likely having lunch at your desk 3 to 4 days a week anyway.
Yeah.
I don't want you schmoing around Palo Alto or frickin' San Jose, California.
Worth me bringing in burritos.
Absolutely. In the economy of scale, they're not paying very much for that food.
No.
There's no way. Yes, it's a few $1,000,000 a year. The amount of productivity they get, though, in the company by not having people go out to lunch, I guarantee you is... there's no way they'd ever show the math on this.
There's a reason so many of them do it.
It's not a perk. They're buying your time for cheaper.
Right.
And you just don't know it. And you know what? It's fine because people there love it. Because they're like, bring your friends in. Because of course the objection is, well, sometimes I want to go out to lunch with my friends. Fine, bring them in here. We'd love to feed your friends for free. We'll give them burritos too.
Who are your friends? What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Then it becomes we'll give you burritos. This is a recruiting stop.
Absolutely, it's a recruiting stop. You don't think if anything ever goes wrong with what I'm doing.
Tell your friends we have poke bowls on Tuesday. Tell your friends we have, and then it becomes a...
I'll tell you right now, when I went to LinkedIn, everybody was cool that I met. I saw the gym. They have a trainer that's there all day. You can go lift. You can go work out with the trainer. Then you go get, a fresh sushi or a poke bowl from the chefs. Or you walk outside. They got food trucks of all kinds, depending on the day. And, you probably work long hours. But I was sitting down with a couple of the people that work there. And I was like, so is this kind of just like college? And she's like, yeah. it's a lot like college with better food. She goes, you know what? I haven't gone grocery shopping for like 4 months.
Yeah.
Because I come in and I have a little breakfast, and then I go to work, and then I have lunch, and then I usually stay late enough that I can eat dinner, and then I go home. And I went, what do you do on weekends? She goes, just kind of like go out to eat or something, or like, you know.
Yeah.
And I went, oh yeah, because you would do that anyway.
Right.
Yep.
You skip breakfast on the weekend. Then you have a little bit of lunch, and then you go out with your friends, and you have to do that, 2 days a week? Like, why would you ever go grocery shopping?
Sure.
I was like, do you have a gym membership? She's like, no, I don't need one. I can just work out after work. And I was like, oh, yeah, good point. Like, they want you to do it's actually brilliant. And if anything ever goes wrong with the Jordan Harbinger Show, I'm going to apply to work at LinkedIn.
Sure. I have a friend who's been at Facebook about 10 months, and it's the same thing. He's going through that thing where it's like, I went in the grocery store the other day and I forgot how much coffee creamer costs.
Yeah.
All kinds of things like that. Like, he doesn't have to go to the gas station but he never leaves. He's there all day, and he's fine with it. So they are purchasing your time.
Yeah.
And it's okay. So it's not like an exploitative practice or anything like that.
Is it though?
Yeah, it's fine. If you like it, it's fine. But
Yeah.
I want to get back to your show because
Sure.
one of
Yeah,
the
I don't
things
know.
that
was
has
a
happened
crazy rabbit hole.
with our show is that we've met some people who were great guests. We've met some people who have changed our lives. We've made tons of friends and stuff. Is there a guest that you would point to who's been in the last year on your show who you can say, I knew I'd get a great episode out of that guy. I didn't realize that I'd make a friend who has changed my life in some way.
Robert Greene was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
He's like he wrote 48 Laws of Power, Mastery, the Laws of Human Nature. First of all, he's a genius. Second of all, such a great person. People who read the 48 Laws of Power think he's going to be some sort of like malignant psychopath because he wrote the 48 Laws of Power, which is popular in like prisons and stuff. I mean, it's popular everywhere, but it really made a run in like certain circles where people are misusing it. He wrote it as kind of like a warning for all those things.
Wow.
Not as a how-to manual, but of course,
Yeah.
it's a double-edged sword.
Somebody, though, has gotten the right thing out of it in that environment.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and so Robert Greene's episode, it's great. We talked about a lot of amazing things in that episode with Robert Greene, and also he's just such an awesome guy.
Yeah.
And I keep in touch with him all the time. He invites me to stuff. Unfortunately, he lives in L.A. and I live in San Jose, but he's just a great, great guy. And I just think he's amazing and just in every way. And I hope he writes something else. I mean, his book is worth reading and rereading, and all his books are. But also to be an awesome person too is kind of like that's a feat,
Yeah.
Because you can almost be kind of a dick if you've got like multiple classic amazing books. You can.
Very true.
You can get away with it.
Sure. And they'll keep giving back to you. And so you almost don't need the audience will continue to grow because that thing is sitting there and it's regenerating on its own. So
Are you still becoming a better host?
Oh my God, yeah. This year, one of the most common pieces of feedback is can't put my finger on it, but this show is much better than the last one. And at first I thought people were like just being nice. But when you get hundreds of those, there's people, if they were just being nice, would say different things.
Yeah.
They wouldn't all say the same thing. And so, yeah. And also when I was in New York, I went to Philadelphia, took some on-camera training courses to do better videos for the show. I've got a voice teacher that teaches me how to manage my voice. I take like improv classes so that I can nail different types of comedic timing on the show. Not that I don't make a lot of jokes, as you guys know, but when I do, I want to do them well and not just be like, ugh.
Well, it's not just for the jokes, though.
No, it's not really jokes.
It's the timing
it's timing in general, yeah. And I'm thinking about looking at, I don't even know how else to put this. I'm trying to take like, I guess they're storytelling workshops, but it's not really like Once Upon a Time. It's more like, here's narrative and flow. And I read books from guys like Stephen Pressfield where they talk about how to construct things that are compelling. It has nothing to do with what I do, but it does in a way.
It does, absolutely.
I'm doing
it's
storytelling.
no different than learning Kung Fu. It's like you're not going to be a Shaolin monk. you're just learning to use your body. You're learning to flex your flexibility is growing. You're doing things that allow for spatial reasoning in your interactions with people, and you learn things you didn't mean to learn. So just about the betterment of the craft of telling a story on your podcast when you have somebody on who has a story. You're extracting a story.
Exactly. So I take lots of different, I mean, even at the gym, I'm like, okay, I need to pay attention to this because this is my stand up for a long time muscle, or this is my sit down and be comfortable muscle, or this is my like look better on camera set of muscles. And those things are important, and it's weird because people don't think like telling people that you run a podcast but you train like an athlete, they're just going to like laugh at your in your face.
That does sound pretty funny.
It is, and it's ridiculous. But at the same time, it's kind of like, okay, I can either go, I don't need a storytelling workshop, it's just a podcast, or I can get better at that one element and get 1% better during that 3-month period.
Yeah.
And just keep doing that for like 20, 30 years.
Whose podcasting and or hosting and or interviewing prowess are you really paying attention to right now?
Good question. Guy Raz is good at interviewing. He is not that entertaining. He does a show called How I Built This. He's not that entertaining, but he's really good at asking questions, getting great stories out of people. That said, also I've heard that he will do like 6-hour recording sessions, and he's got like a 45-minute show. So that's kind of a different animal. Yeah. That doesn't mean he's not good. It just means I'm very relieved to hear that what I'm hearing is not a 45-minute recording or a 50-minute recording cut down to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'm like, dang.
Because it's really dense.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he does a really good job with the production. His producer is obviously really good too. But he's really good. I like this guy, Tom Bilyeu with Impact Theory. He does a good show. I don't love all of like the health stuff. I wish there was more like debunking of stuff on there. But again, who am I to tell somebody like, hey, you should do this other thing that I'm more interested in? Like, it's ridiculous. But he's a good interviewer. He's got good energy. That's Tom Bilyeu from Impact Theory. I like James Altucher as well. He's got a very different style, but he thinks really differently. So, and I like that about him. So I don't go
I'm
like,
glad you
I want
said
to
that
be this guy.
because I can't figure out what I like about him so much.
James Altucher?
Yeah.
What it is he's not pretentious.
Yeah.
So there's that.
That has a lot to do with it, yeah.
That has a lot to do with it. But he's also not like, I'm so not pretentious, I'm going to be the not pretentious guy. Like, that's very easy to fall into. He doesn't really do that.
Well, the whole thing about him living out of a suitcase like he did.
He no longer does that, but yeah.
He no longer does it, but when he did it, it was like, I'm doing this, or I've done this thing. Oh, wow, that's such a great adventurous thing to do. What an amazing... Yeah, it was a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Because he could have been like... That's the thing is like, he does things to try them, but then he doesn't do things to try them and then talk about them all fucking day like a hipster.
Yeah.
Right? He's trying... Because he's like, it's really convenient for me right now, and it's interesting.
But he is really exploring some adventurous thing about it, but it's for him.
Yeah, it's for him. It's not so he can go like, my newest book is how to live out of a duffel bag for 8 months. Like, I hate when people do that. I get it, but it does drive me nuts because it makes me think that everything they do is so that they can document the thing that they do so that they can be an influencer. James is not doing that.
Yeah.
He's like likable in a quirky way because he's not a pretentious guy, and that's what people relate to. And he thinks about things really deeply. He doesn't just go, oh, I'm going to do this because no one else is doing it, and I'm going to be contrarian. He's like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And when I had lunch with him last week, and he's a remarkably deep thinker. A lot of people think he's just going to be contrarian. Sometimes he's contrarian because he's thinking about something and it doesn't make sense to him. Yeah. But he's not contrarian just to be like, I'm contrarian blogger guy.
Yeah.
He's not picking up that identity because it like sells well. And I like that about him a lot, actually. And I think that's what people are picking up. Guy like Tom Bilyeu with Impact Theory, what they're picking up is this is a guy who built $1 billion brand. Now he's doing something else. He's really, really intense. And that's, but in a good way, not like in this weird, unapproachable way. He's really intense. Everything he does, it probably works like, 15 hours a day, 5 days a week. But he's great and he's likable. And that's great. And Guy Raz is just like a really well polished sort of question asker. So I pay attention to those guys. But frankly, like other guys, the people that I hire to help me are guys you never heard of, some guys you have heard of. Like I recently paid like $8,000 to do like 2 hours with a CNN broadcaster who teaches at Columbia School of Journalism. And I said, can I audit your class at Columbia? And he's like, let me see. And basically the administration was like, hell no. Which I thought was interesting because, I mean, look, I'm not like a kid trying to get free classes.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I've got like if you say, hey, this guy has 5 million monthly downloads and he wants to, and he does a show and you guys are all in my class praying that one day you get a shot at something like that, can
That's
you join our
legit.
class? Like, I would like to think I would add more to the class than I would take by
Sure.
sitting in the back of the fucking room. And they just would not allow it.
Wow.
And I just, whatever, they got rules.
Yeah.
I also understand that those rules are there so that homeless people don't just camp out at Columbia journalism classes. I'd like to think there's a way to slip in there,
Yeah.
especially if the professor's cool with it. But apparently it's like a whole big thing. So anyway, I hire people like that because I'm like, I need you to listen to my show and critique it. And you can hire people to critique your stuff all you want, but unless it's somebody who's got 30 years of broadcasting experience, it's debatable what value you're going to get out of that.
Yeah.
It really is.
I've been talking about it a lot, but it's just so impactful. I've been really digesting a lot of Dan Rather's interviews. And he's a master. And the thing is, it's one thing that he disappears and you do an interview and he's not there at all. But it's the other thing, like as a mechanic in the interview sense, to hear him set it up. And the example I've been using just because it's so great is he's got Kenny Rogers all the way warmed up, 3/4 of the way in, and he just sits back, lets the silence do the work, and says, regrets. And Kenny is along for the ride.
God, that's awesome.
He doesn't go, I got no regrets. He goes, his answer was this. Those last 2 kids I had, 70 years old.
What?
I should have done that.
No.
Can you imagine?
Wow. Did
And
he
then Dan
qualify
doesn't
that
have-
by being like, but I love them. They're great.
Yeah, and Dan doesn't say a word. He just sits back and lets Kenny do the work, and he does. He's like, I love my kids, but a grown man like me, as old as I am, they're not going to see me grow old, and I'm never going to see who they are.
Wow. I want to write this
That
down.
is that is super heavy.
And
My
it's
wife
he
took
just
my
says
phone.
one.
That is super
it's
heavy.
one word, and it's
We won't let you
just
forget
so
it.
heavy.
Yeah, we'll shoot you an email or something.
Good Lord. That's awesome. Is that Dan Rather's new what
The
is it
big
called?
interview.
Yeah.
That one. The big interview.
Oh, he had one that was called maybe that was called that. Is it red and black, the logo?
I can't think of it right now.
We should link that in the show notes.
Yeah, we will
Jason,
for
link
sure.
that in the. Oh wait, it's not my show.
Yeah.
Dan Rather was like my childhood hero, and when this is funny. So my mom, I used to see him on TV all the time. Duh. And then they would show like clips of his past career where he'd be in like Vietnam or whatever. And then I remember, I think it was like Gulf War. I saw him and I was like, damn, that's cool. He's there. He doesn't have to sit in a trench and fight.
Yeah.
But he gets to like walk around and ask people what's going on. Like, this is the fucking coolest thing I've ever seen. And you know what? My mom saw that spark in me and she goes, oh shit. She goes, oh my God. She goes, you know what? Honey, you don't want to do that. Those people, they barely make any money. And I went, oh no. And I was like, I don't even care. And she's like, no. It's a really bad way to make a living. And I was like, okay. Now I'm like, wait a minute. Dan Rather's rich as hell.
Yeah.
Come on.
She just didn't want you to go to war.
She didn't want me to go to war
something.
zones and do stupid stuff and get killed. She didn't care. She's like, those guys get their butt shot off. But now I confronted her about it when I was like 35.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute. And she's like, did I say that? Yeah, I was probably just worried about you. And she's like, little did I know it wouldn't have helped much because I've driven
That's
my parents.
adorable, Mrs. Harbinger.
Yeah, right? But like, she was just not having it. Because she saw me light up when I would see Dan Rather, and I was like, I want to do that. He's talking to the president. He's talking to the general. He's out here in the trenches. Like, this is the coolest job ever. She just saw that and went, oh, crap. But I love the idea that, oh, it's a tough way to make a living. I'm sure Dan Rather's on his like 80-foot yacht being like, it's a tough way to make a living, kid.
Yeah, right. Well,
You know, like,
he
no
got-
way.
I'll screw that story up, so I'm not even going to go down that road. But, he hasn't had it totally easy, and he sort of got pushed out. But anyway.
Oh, I know. that's a shame. That way that his career
a shame
essentially
for all of us.
a shame for everybody involved. Yeah, and I got to read up on that. I've got his book because I am so curious about his take, but I also hope in the book that it's not one of those, I made a mistake and I ended my career poorly. Anyway, now I have 3 dogs. Because, when you write your bio, you don't want to dwell on, like, the shitty part.
Yeah.
In a lot of bios, they make that mistake.
Yeah.
You read the bio and they, like, allude to something and they never, like, really go and lean into it. It
lean
sucks.
into it. Because guess what? You're not fooling anybody.
I know. I saw Larry King, who's a great dude and a friend of mine, is his book. He kind of like talks about how one of his marriages ended.
Let's just acknowledge that Larry King's fucking masterful too.
Yeah.
How his marriage ended.
Oh yeah, and like, but then he's like, I made a mistake and I wasn't able to recover, and the marriage never recovered. And I was like, oh man, I know you don't want to say I cheated on my wife or whatever it was, but you really have to.
Yep.
Yeah.
And look, I get that maybe he wants to keep his personal life separate, but especially when the mistake or the issue affects your career, like in Dan Rather's book, like, are there 3 straight up chapters dedicated to this whole Bush thing? Or is it like, and then this whole thing happened and I regret it and I sincerely apologize. Anyway, now I have 3 dogs and I like fishing. Like, I'm just praying. It's weird. I haven't read the book yet because I'm afraid that I'm going to be disappointed in how it, you know the feeling? Like, you ever not watch a movie because you're like, I'm worried it's going to suck and then I'll hate Spider-Man.
What's worse is you bought it. And you have
I have it. I've had it for like a year.
Like, okay, almost.
Or 2 years, however long it's been out.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't wait to get my hands on it, and then I downloaded it like 5 seconds after I bought it, and it's just sitting there.
This is my promise to you. Not that you asked me to make any promises, but my promise to myself through Jordan Harbinger is that if I ever have the opportunity to write that book, whatever it is I'm leaning in, it's going to be like chapter 10. For 3 years, I spent $41 million on whores and cocaine. And then, we'll explore that for however long.
I hope so, too.
At some point, I want. Anyway, but yeah, we need to lean into all of those things.
Because you can only, like, there's a cap on how much cocaine you can do before it kills you.
Right.
So if you cap that at like 5 million.
Yeah,
like you could, because you're buying it for your friends and stuff. Like, you have like crazy parties. That still leaves $36 million for whores.
All right, I like this math.
Yeah,
that's good math. I also want to say I have to apologize because I killed Lee, I killed Julio, and these are all the guys I bought cocaine for. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Well, you bought good stuff, or it had fentanyl in it.
Right.
That's a scary thing that's going on.
It's really scary. Hey, so as we kind of button up because we're hit.
Oh, you don't want to go down the fentanyl rabbit hole?
We can go wherever.
Oh, you don't want to talk about fentanyl?
I'm respecting your time.
No,
and
I'm
I'm
just kidding.
saying we're rounding third base here as far as the arrangement we made.
The rails got freaking
I know
ripped off this thing.
I feel really good about that though. My son Nico's 21 years old, and recently
that's cool.
He told me, Dad, I'm going to Maui. And I said, sweet, when are you doing that? And he said, January 13th. I said, how long are you staying? He said,
I'm never coming home.
I bought a one-way ticket.
No.
Yeah.
What?
And I said, okay, let's embrace this experience, please. What are you going to do? And he said, I don't know.
Oh, he doesn't have like a job waiting for him?
He had nothing. He left on January 13th.
Oh, yeah.
He had no job waiting for him.
Okay.
He had no
connections,
place to live.
Yeah.
So he just showed up with no place to live.
I know one person who lives on Maui, and I gave him his phone number, but I knew he wasn't going to call him. My wife knows one person who lives on Maui, and we knew he wasn't going to call her either. And they both were like, I can get him some work, I can get him a roommate, whatever.
No, it's like that's if you're like homeless and you just got beat up and robbed and you're in the hospital and they're like, who should we call to pick you up? You're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, we got a person.
But otherwise,
No, and he went there completely. I mean, he could have made an arrangement or something, but he didn't. He went there with a, duffel bag and a backpack, and he showed up on Maui and went like, okay, here we go.
Why Maui? Just like the weather and the surfer sort of thing?
Yeah, maybe. But
loves pineapple?
He doesn't, he doesn't surf really often. Like gave him a surfing lesson once when he was 10 or whatever. We went to
Okay,
Ventura
so
Beach.
he's not like
He's not a surfer dude.
Gotcha.
He's not any of those things that would,
Does he look like you? Because if so, he looks kind of Hawaiian.
Yeah,
blends in.
he's my wife is white, so he's taller than me, but he's brown enough that he's not completely like.
Gotcha. So he doesn't look like a homeless tourist. He just looks like a local.
Yeah, sort of. So yeah, he's got things going for him, but he just decided that was the experience that he wanted to.
Not being racist.
Yeah, I appreciate that you remember that.
Guam is not the same thing as Hawaii. However,
it's not.
It's all Polynesian.
Yeah, but we all love each other. Like we're all,
You
like
better.
my island brethren.
That's like the whole thing.
Yeah,
the love down
exactly.
there. But yeah, so he found.
But what he wanted was the experience of I'm going somewhere where I know nothing and nobody, and I'm going to make it happen.
I mean, I can get behind that.
Yeah. So, as a quick update, he found a place to live. It's shitty. I'll tell you all about it. It's great story. He's found some work, also shitty, but great story,
that's like
and I'll
the
tell you all about it.
point,
Yeah,
right?
that is the point.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if you are going to speak to our listener who's out there who's like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do, what encouragement would you want to give a guy who's just considering that he ought to do that?
To do what? Find out what they want to do, or to go to Maui?
Just go do something that, because let's face it, you think things through, you help us think things through, you help us strategize, and kind of, that's what we come to you for.
Yeah.
As listeners, we betterment through strategy and execution.
Getting it. I do think things through, but I wasn't always like that. I will say, some of the biggest growth experiences I've had, one was I got a job overseas teaching English, and the pay was so bad that I basically had to dig into like savings and borrow money from family and friends to survive.
Just to exist.
I was getting paid like $100 a month.
Wow.
So you can't
Yeah.
do shit on that. I was in Serbia, not Siberia, but Serbia is former Yugoslavia. But it was the capital city. Like there were meals I had that were easily, it's cheaper than America, but I still had $20 dinners with friends.
Yeah. And you're making
$100
a month.
Yeah, no, my rent in the lowest rent I could find was 4 times that amount of money, probably, right? So, and that was a great spot, like, and everything, but I still lived with a family in their basement. Like, it was cool for me, but it wasn't like I want to live here forever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I highly recommend going off on your own. If you have no savings and no safety net, like, that's not necessary. But I highly recommend that young people go off and do something. You don't have to do that thing, though, where, like, no one knows where you are and, like, you're completely unprepared. I get the temptation of that. It sounds romantic. You don't have to do that shit. You can go online, search for a job, get something, build your resume up at home so that you're somewhat qualified to do it, like take the right tests or like, whatever you need to do. You can learn the language basics, and then you can show up and do your
function.
job and function. Yeah, there's no reason to like show up and not know anything and then like da-da-da. I get that you kind of want to prove yourself.
Yeah.
You can totally start proving yourself before you leave home. You can. Learn the language a little bit, take some lessons on Skype. Like, you have a smartphone, right? Use that to, like, study vocabulary. Get a job before you go out there. There's no reason to be knocking on doors in some foreign country. There's just not. You can prepare. It's still... this is the modern age where you should be working on yourself. You don't have to immediately go into out of the frying pan into the fire to do that. You can work your way up. If you're finding that you're working your way up because you're too chicken to pull the trigger, that's one thing. But if you're like, hey, I'm done with college in 6 months, I don't have a job, I'd like to go abroad, start working on your stuff now. Like, don't wait and then be like, I'm leaving now and I have no money. Like, that's just dumb, and it's not going to contribute to your development. It'll only contribute to your stress level, and if you don't believe,
potentially your absolute failure.
So the problem, you're right. Here's the problem: a lot of people are like, "No, you don't get it. I want to like start from scratch." And what you should be worrying about are the actual contingencies upon which you might have to come home. And one of those, you're like, I'm never coming. No, whatever. That's bullshit. You might come home if you get sick and you can't pay your hospital bill.
Yeah.
You might get sent home by the embassy. Like, you might not have an actual choice. You know, they might be like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And the embassy's like, we'll fly your ass home. You should have money to do that. You should have money to set up in a place that is, you don't have to live in a great neighborhood. Yeah, you want to live in the hood. Fine, cool. You still need to find a place to live. What will contribute to your failure is if all your friends get sick of you because you're a freaking freeloader.
Yeah.
Like, you should be prepared to succeed there. And part of that is doing a little bit of prep work beforehand. So you're right. A lot of people think, I'm going to show up and it's going to be awesome and all that. No, you should prepare beforehand. It doesn't mean never go because you're spending 3 years mastering the nuances of literary Japanese. But what it does mean, you know what I mean? Like, but what it does mean is you can say some basic stuff. You have a dictionary, you know how to use it.
You can order some food, get a place to
You've
stay.
got a job as an English teacher, which is, by the way, going to totally suck.
Yeah.
You know, in Japan, especially. You know how to order stuff. You know how to get around. Like, that stuff is table stakes. Showing up unprepared is not brave. It's not going to contribute to your development. It's going to contribute to your failure, like you said. And it's unnecessary. And trust me, I have tried these things.
Yeah.
I have tried showing up abjectly unprepared. All I did was waste time in country, like lamenting and like struggling when I could have been thriving the whole time. And there's a benefit. And people go, I don't want to thrive the whole time. I want to struggle. No, you want to get really good at the language. You want to develop really strong relationships. If you spend your first 4 to 6 months being like, I have bread. Oh, sorry, I don't know German. That's not a useful bit of time.
Yeah.
You're wasting
There
that
are
time.
useful struggles that you should seek
Right,
out.
right,
And they're not those.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Great advice.
Yes.
Once again, pragmatic advice. I thought I had a stumper for you, and
No
you
way.
lined it up nicely.
How's he doing right now? Is he?
He's doing great. He
Yeah.
found a place to live the second day he was there.
Okay, that's fortunate.
He's
What do you
working
do for the
at like
first
one of the
day?
health food bar. He's got an Airbnb.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good.
So-
So he didn't like sleep outside
And he
and
didn't
get mugged.
No. And that was my thing was you can sleep outside, but like he's got a wallet and an iPhone.
Yeah,
and,
you don't
know,
want
I
to
mean,
do
it's
that
not,
anywhere
Yeah, so
in America.
he
probably.
needed some shelter, and he found some pretty quickly, and he socked away some money before he got there. So he did want the experience of I just showed up and I didn't have anything lined up.
I get that.
Except I had a little money in my pocket.
I've been there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been there. I get it, but that's what I'm saying is that's massively overrated.
Yeah.
Like
have a
Maui's
little
one
bit of
thing.
dough so that you can find out that's massively overrated.
Sure, then go to
without
Maui and
killing
do it.
yourself. Yeah.
But don't go to Serbia or Germany or Russia or China and try to do
this
it.
motherfucker's been kidnapped.
Yeah, like
And
you'll
if you
end
guys
up in a
just
bad
heard
situation.
that for the very first time, go back, listen to the Jordan Harbinger Show, and catch up because
That's
you'll
right.
hear all about it. Yeah, fucking legitimately kidnapped. What the hell?
Yeah, you will put yourself in a. If you show up, there's a difference between being on that curve of I'm kind of not prepared, but I'll jump to the next level because I'm being pressed. But generally, we don't rise to the level of our expectations. We sort of default to the level of our training, and you can push yourself on that curve. Like if you show up to Maui and you're like, oh my god, I got to find a job, I got to find a place to live. I'm carrying everything I have. Like that I value with me. I don't know anyone here. This is going to be crazy. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But if you show up to China and you're like, I don't know Chinese. I'm living in the ghetto and it's really dangerous.
I have
don't-
these valuables, and I
I
don't
have-
know who's dangerous
Right.
around here.
I have
Yeah.
all these valuables and I can't tell who's got a friend who's going to trick me. And I don't have a place to live. I'm going to sleep outside tonight. And it's January. I'm going to freeze to death. Like that's not like on the learning curve. That's just like, oh crap, you just came completely ready. Like you just walked into the boxing ring and you're like, I can box, and Mike Tyson is like, oh, you think so? I'm gonna bite your ear off and then punch you. Right? So like you don't get any value from setting yourself up to fail. There's a difference between setting yourself up for a big challenge and setting yourself up to get absolutely destroyed. There's no value in the latter. There isn't. I mean, you might have to do it once and learn the hard-ass lesson.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like, stop doing that.
Stop doing that.
There you go.
All right. Pete?
That's perfect. I'm not saying anything else.
Terrific. Our guest today was Jordan Harbinger. Listen to him on the Jordan Harbinger Show. It's jordanharbinger.com. And sign up for everything. Your life will be better. Jordan, thanks, man.
You're welcome. This is the ice sound.